Hey guys, thanks for tuning in today. My name is Jared Lyles with Jared and Lyles PC. We're a general practice law firm here in Silver Hill, Alabama. And today what we're going to be talking about is something that we get a lot of questions about here at the office when it comes to estate planning. And that's, how do I avoid probate? It's a question that comes up a lot because people have this idea of what the probate process is. And even though we'll have another video that will hopefully show you that probate is not as bad as most people think it is important to look and see how to transfer your assets outside of that probate process, simply because of the time that it takes to get through the probate process. So that's what we're going to look at here today. Now, most people, when they're looking to avoid the probate process, automatically go to, do I need a trust? And a trust is one way to do that, but trust can be quite expensive. What we're going to go through today is a way that you can do almost everything that a trust can do without having to spend that money. You just take a day of running errands and you can accomplish the same thing. So we're going to go ahead and get started. What I've got, and this is the diagram, this is kind of the thing that I've come up with over the last 15 years. It's the easiest way that I have come up with to explain how to do this. So what I've got over here is I've got your four major assets that most people have: house and property, investments, your bank account, and then vehicles. Okay, so this is kind of what the general setup of an estate is going to look like. When you die, all the assets that are in your name that do not transfer on their own terms, that's an important term we're going to come back to. All these assets that do not transfer on their own terms go into the estate that is governed by your will. Now, your will, again, another common misconception is that your will helps you avoid probate. That's not the case. The will is actually just the rules by which the probate is conducted. Okay, so that's your instructions for the estate. So all the assets go into the estate, the debts are paid in the estate, and then everything else is shot out the other end to your spouse, or if your spouse is predeceased, you to your kids equally. That's the general setup. All right, so what we're going to be looking at today is how to get these over here without going through the estate, because the estate generally is going to take about 9 months. That's the biggest reason to be looking at this. So first thing that we're going to look at is your house. Now, the way that you can do this initially with your spouse is, I've got written here, it's jointly with a right of survivorship. Check your deeds, make sure that you own your property jointly with a right of survivorship. Now, what that means is that automatically upon your death, it'll go to your spouse immediately. Now, what happens if your spouse is already deceased? What happens if you're not married? What happens if you just want to get it to your kids? Now, what you're going to do here is you can go ahead and deed the property to your kids, and you can do it with what's called a life estate. Now, what that means is that your kids own it. They already own it. Whoever you want to get it to owns the property, but you have a life estate, which means as long as you are alive, you are in absolute control of that property. It is taxed as if it's yours. So if you have homestead or anything like that, that stays in place. You have control over that property. Now, you can't sell it, you can't mortgage it, but neither can they. But in either of these scenarios, you are bypassing the estate and getting it right to your heirs, to your spouse and your kids, whoever you want it to go to. Investments. Here we're looking at investments. You're looking at things like your 401k, any sort of stocks, any sort of investment accounts, anything like that. Okay, now this one's very simple. Simply call the company that you hold those investments with and put a beneficiary. Okay, list your beneficiary. All right, now what that says is that means upon my death, everything goes over to whoever you got listed. One thing I will kind of give you an instruction on, if it's a 401k or if it's something that you got early on in your life, you got out of college, you first started working with a company, you have a 401k, you may not have ever listed your spouse. And if you did, you might not have gone back and listed your kids after you had kids. So go back and make sure that you have a primary beneficiary and your secondary beneficiary set up, so that way, when you pass away, on the terms of the document, it says pay upon death. All right, that's that phrase again. Terms of the deed says transfer upon death. Terms of the investment says pay it upon death. Now, bank account, this includes anything like a checking account, savings account, any account that you would have at a bank. You can do pretty much the same thing now, but what it's called in a bank account setting is a POD election. That means pay on death. So what you can do is you can walk into your bank, and any account that you have there, you can add what's called a pay on death election. And that means when you die, whoever you want to give that money to walks into the bank, hands them the death certificate. They say, oh, I'm very sorry for your loss. And then they give a check. Now, what's beautiful about this is if you want to do this with your kids, you can list both people. You can list your kids, and let's say in this scenario you have 2 kids. So you list both of these kids' names, and then when you give them the death certificate, or when they give them the death certificate, they just issue 2 equal checks. So it does what the estate's going to do anyway, but it does it automatically and without any sort of way. All right. So that's good for any account that you'll have a bank. Now, the last thing that we're dealing with here are vehicles. Now, a lot of y'all know this one. All right. Whenever you buy a vehicle and with your spouse or with whoever you're buying it with, always a good idea to have "or" in the middle of your 2 names. It could be "or," it could be "and or," but just as long as that "or" is there, that will authorize that other person after you've died to sell the vehicle or continue owning it, whatever they need to do. But that's only good for the first person. That's only good for the spouse. In the 15 years I've been doing this, I've not found a way to automatically transfer a vehicle to your kids without putting their name on it. But if your spouse is already deceased, not a bad idea. Go ahead and add one of your kids with that "or," and it'll transfer it all outside of the estate. All right, so what we've done here, what I've tried to show you is that all of this does in effect what you're wanting that trust to do. Now, don't get me wrong. You want to come into my office and you want to pay me, a lot of money to set you up a trust that will do this, then you're more than welcome to do that, and we can do that. We're equipped to handle trust. And sometimes there's other reasons that trust are needed for special needs or things like that, where we can set that up. But what you're talking about here, the only thing that costs you any money with me or with any lawyer in this scenario is going to be this right here, which if we wanted to redo a deed, but generally redoing a deed is going to be $100 or less, whereas a trust is going to be substantially more than that. So just take a look at this. Look at the stuff that you have. Probably all the assets that you have will fall into one of these 4 categories. So just look at doing this. Take you a day of running errands, and it'll save you the money of doing a trust. So if you have any questions about this, avoiding probate or estate planning in general, please feel free to give us a call. We hope this video was helpful, was informational for you, and we hope you keep tuning in. Thank you.